We'll soldier through. What I'm going to do, there's a whole lot of things the Corps of Engineers does. And what I want to do today really is talk about our authorities, the primary ones, and the appropriations as well, just so you kind of get a sense in general how the Corps fits into disaster response. I'm Colonel Tipton. I'm the Deputy Division Commander of our Northwestern Division, which is aligned with Northcom. So I'm really representing all of the Corps of Engineers here today. And I think General Walsh, our DCG for Emergency Operations, will be in on Thursday for that session as well. So that's my background. Go ahead to the next slide. I guess that's me. Okay. The Corps has some really strange looking boundaries. We have 9 divisions, 8 of them or 7 of them are in the continental United States. And they look like that because they're all shaped on watersheds, which was one of our earliest authorities, was really navigation. And so that's why you see these very strange lines. The flood control, flood fighting, that's another one of our primary authorities we have. But when it comes to Stafford Act responses, which become more state-driven, we divide this thing up in states. And so in particular, I go look at Missouri here, and you see there's 3 different districts, 2 different divisions in the state of Missouri. And so what we've done to simplify that is the Kansas City district, our division, has the lead for emergency operations in that state. In fact, it got a little confusing when we had Joplin last year. Who's the lead state? Well, the state knew it was us. It works out very well. So if you're dealing in any one of these areas that have 2 districts or 2 divisions, you need to find out which particular district has the lead for that state. They train and practice for each one of those. We also have the Transatlantic Division, which is all of our support downrange, and then the Pacific Division as well. That's got Korea, Japan, and the Pacific AOR. Next slide, please. So here's what we do. We basically break ourselves into military programs and civil works programs. And most folks know what we do on the military side, all the milcon construction. You see the Corps out there. You see what we're doing downrange in support of in Afghanistan. So you kind of have an understanding of how that works. However, 2/3 of our program is actually on the civil war side, and you can see it based on the number of people. Navigation, all the navigable waterways, the Corps of Engineers is responsible for maintaining those navigation channels. Hydropower, which is came along after we built the dams, but for instance in the northwest where I'm at, the Corps of Engineers, we generate 75% of the hydropower in the northwestern United States, so it's a very significant economic driver for the country. Flood control, this gets into the hurricane piece, but it's flood control throughout the country, water supply, regulatory, that somebody really got mad at us and gave us regulatory authority. It's a big pain in the rear end, but we have it for the wetlands and for the navigation piece. And then down below, the disaster response, which we've been doing since the late 1800s. Informally, it became formalized in the early 1900s. So we've been doing it a long time, well before the Stafford Act. Next slide, please. So looking at our authorities, you can kind of look at it in 3 big bins. Our own authorities are over here. Public Law 8499, that's the Flood Control Act of 1941. That gives us direct authority, and we also get direct appropriations to work with the states and the tribes throughout the country for flood control, flood response. And it's got all the sub areas in there. We also have civil works authorities, particularly on our own projects, our dams, our reservoirs, and the loss that we run. We have specific money in an emergency to respond to take care of those structures. So everything here we do directly, we can do before any disaster declaration, we can declare it ourselves based on what's going on. And we work this completely outside the confines of FEMA until it gets to a level FEMA comes in to support or a DISCA action. Then there's, of course, the Stafford Act, of which we are just one player. We have the lead for ESF3, which, as you can see under here, is ice, water, temporary emergency power, debris removal, temporary roofing, temporary housing, critical public facilities, infrastructure, and whatever else pops up. We tend to kind of get involved working that. We also support 6, 9, and 14 pretty heavily, but we play right along with the rest of you and take all of our lead under FEMA, under Stafford Act. And then we also have Army in our Navy. So we fall under the DISCA and as well as the overseas operation there you see on the far side. Now I'm going to jump to a slide, and a lot of people are going to get excited. I want you to understand that this slide is really a use-case-oriented slide. It's basically how we view the world. It's not really designed to describe everything going on, but it kind of takes these authorities and lays them out a little, what I think, pretty simplistically. So if you go to the next slide. So those three authorities that I kind of talked about over here on the USAFE side, the PL 8499s, you can see we're working directly with states on that. And so a lot of times you'll see the Corps out there involved doing things even before FEMA is declared and moved out there. That's because we're doing them under those authorities. Talked before, everything under 93-288 or the Stafford Act comes as a mission assignment coordinated with the field coordinating officer. We have ESF3 reps co-located with them. Again, the DCO also in the same location, and this is the loop that gets kind of confusing, and it goes both ways. In general, as we saw in Sandy, and it was really great to see our leadership, and General Jacoby say, listen, we are in direct support of the ESS. And that was music to our ears, because every time we're out there in the past, a lot of folks say, we are Army, you work for us. And so we get into this kind of do loop as we go out to execute the missions in support of FEMA, and that becomes always kind of a problem. When you get it straight that we're actually ESF3, and that the DISCA support is really supporting the ESFs in a direct support role, that really cleans things up an awful lot and allows that coordination to work. But that back chain can work the other way. For instance, a great example is real estate. If you're executing a DISCA mission, and you're not on a base or some installation that we own, and you're out there, you got to set up operations. The Corps of Engineers will come in and have to actually execute your real estate agreement to set up operations. So it does work both ways. We can actually be employed in support of our North in a disaster. During the last exercise, it was kind of unique for us with Sandy in the evolution of what we're calling, I guess, SCRAP, whatever, scalable, complex, remedial action, but complex disasters. You know, we had Katrina, which was a significant emotional event for the Corps of Engineers, and we spent a number of years refining how we respond. And then Sandy hit, and Sandy was a very, very positive exercise for the Corps. From kind of going through it, coming out of it, a lot of great lessons were learned. One of the things that General Bostic, the Chief of Engineers, did was we saw how big it was, a big urban area, and he really activated probably about 50% of our senior leadership to mobilize and fall in on key nodes. Something we hadn't done before. There was a little bit of hesitancy that we were saturating the battlefield, so to speak. But the reality is it worked pretty doggone well. It opened up and we started filling a lot more of the nodes than we normally do. So go to the next slide. These are kind of some of the things that we brought out of it. But what it did is it painted a much better common operating picture, and especially during the period of time, I don't know if we'll be there before, where You know, there was the, what was it, 48 hours of go find missions, and we didn't have mission assignments. And for us, we got out of the box pretty good, and if we hadn't had all of those nodes in there where people were generally talking fairly well, it would have made life extremely, extremely hard. And because we had all that extra firepower out there, all those nodes, I think we worked through that fairly well, and we believe as we go forward in this complex operations that this is a new TTP or new doctrine that's emerging for the Corps that will push more of our general officers forward and actually bring colonels from various other districts in to fill these various nodes. One area that became very, very important to us was the dual status commander, which when we went into the exercise, I don't think we understood it at all. And as we lived through it, we found that's where we really needed a coordinating element, and more so maybe than the joint coordinating element where we had sent a team initially. Because that's really where the rubbers kind of meet the road. And in the case where we had a couple of missions that generated, and they went around, and I call it the do loop between the DCO, the state, and back down to the DSC commander. Having someone there beside that kind of that do loop there as those missions get resolved is very, very important. I think at the end we had a great case where it was one of our leadership that was out there, and it was a mission that was probably not an appropriate Title 10 mission. It was generated. The deputy mayor wanted this thing to happen, and it came up, and it got sent back down, and came back up, and it finally came over to the DSC commander, and I saw right there the beauty of the DSC commander. The DSC commander made this decision. He said, this is not a Title 10 mission. This is a Title 32 mission. I have the assets. I will execute this mission under Title 32 and resolve that whole do loop right there. So I think there's great goodness in this DSC commander, but it's really going to require us all to understand those authorities and be able to work to support that commander and the support staff. So we're excited to move out in that direction. I think I talked the surge piece there. And then the unique missions that occurred on this last one that we're looking at with DLA, and DLA is going to come up behind us. What a great team effort we had with DLA, and Northcom really helped facilitate that throughout. So we think that was a real plus coming out of the exercise as well. Okay, go to the last slide. So where we are right now, this is kind of a general battle rhythm for the Corps. We immediately come out of one season, we do remedial action planning, where we bring everyone, take a look at our plans. Every one of our divisions conduct their own flood and hurricane rock drills. So if you're a DCO out there and you're working with one of our divisions and you're not tied into those, you know, give me a call while we're here today, and I'll get you linked up. But we ought to have that connection going. We invite all DCOs and even DSCs and Title 10 deputies. You know, if we're not reaching out to you, get a hold of us, because we want to involve you with those rock drills. We do not just the hurricane ones, but the flood exercises that I talked about as well. We're very active with the state and local training exercises. We go through a pretty rigorous for our planning and readiness, our response teams, the roofing PRTs, the water PRTs. All the certifications are completed as we go into the season. We just issued our all hazards outboard ride rate. I think that just came out this last week, so we're on track for that. And we're reworking our remedial action program implementation as we speak. And within the next month, I think we have our flood assessment inventory completed, and we participate in the FEMA's Are You Ready exercises coming up shortly. So I think we're pretty well tied into this battle drill. But with Sandy and our relationship with Northcom and Far North was an excellent event for us. I think we've worked out much better with our Title 10 participation, and we hope to evolve that as we go forward, especially with the evolution of the DSC community. So with that, That's all I've got. Any questions for me? All right, it's break time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.